y'all to help me date this chest. I feel confident that I know how old it is. This is what I would call a country style. It was not made for someone that had commissioned it for more of a prominent household. We know back then, even utilitarian items were much more beautiful than they are today. Today, we pretty much either get beauty or we get utility. We don't tend to get both of those. So let me show you a few things that I do when I am trying to determine the date on a piece of furniture. The first thing I do is look at the overall style. That's going to help you to know kind of what eras you're looking at. Let's say whatever era you determine, then you just have to say, okay, was there a revival period for that? So, because there was a revival period for federal styles in the early 20th century, but it also was originally prominent from the very late 18th century to the early and kind of into the mid 19th century. So first look at that. Then we're going to go through and look at a couple of the construction details. So I'm going to bring you in closer, show you those, and then I'm going to show you the back, which is really important as well. So the first thing we're going to look at is the type of wood. So it has this beautiful like honey amber look to it. It has a really nice tight grain. Now I know the first two types of wood most people are going to say, oh, that's oak or it's maple. Number one, it's not oak. It's a little bit too tight of a grain to be oak, and there's not really quite enough cathedraling here in the wood for it to be classified as oak. Let me tell you why it's not maple. Usually maple is going to have a much more solid appearance to it. It's not going to have all these tiny flecks of grain in there, with the exception if it is a curly cut maple or if it is bird's eye maple. That would be the difference. Then it's important to start looking at what other types of woods were used during this period. And when I say period, right now, I think we can all agree this looks somewhere in the 19th century. But before we do, I want to first show you the other things you immediately want to look for. Number one, does it have veneer? The easiest way to see if a piece has veneer is either by looking at the top or at the drawer face. You see it's solid. There's no little line right here signifying that there's a solid panel back here with another veneer over the front. So this is a really good piece, and you see this line right here. This is usually what they do when they put a veneer over it, that they want like a really fancy cut of grain. And you'll see on here, we don't have that. So now we know it's solid wood. Usually solid wood was used in more of a country style, I'm using air quotes with that, country style setting, because they would locally source the wood. It was not commissioned for a more prominent household, so they weren't as concerned about having that exotic wood on the front. They would just use solid slabs, and they were usually locally sourced. You have to remember, a lot of businesses and a lot of cities were built around logging areas because of the fact they had the material abundantly available for them. Next, we're going to look at the sides of the drawers, which most people, that's the first thing they go to. We're going to look at the types of joinery that's on there. Dovetails are great. They're not always going to be the only type of joint for you, but dovetails are usually a telltale sign. This is clearly not a machine cut because there's some irregularities in there. Do you see this tiny line? That is called a scribe line. That is where the maker marked it off to where that drawer face was going to be, and that's how he chiseled everything. And see how it's not perfectly even. Not knocking on their craftsmanship. It's very, very well done, but there are some irregularities because it's done by hand. That's going to let us know that that was earlier. It was either before mechanization for dovetails, or it was done by someone that was not yet using the machinery that had become available. If you want to dive more into the details on these, all of this is in my ebook, but it is a lot of information to pack into a short video. Higher quality wood that is used, you're still going to see what's called a secondary wood used on the interior. Usually a pine or a poplar. This is definitely pine, and keep in mind that pine from that period far better than the pine of our days, because that was old growth pine. Today we have fast growth pine. It's softer. It's just not as durable. Next, we're going to look at on locks. Usually if you can take your lock out, sometimes, not always, sometimes there will be information on the inside of that lock, whether it be a maker's mark of the lock, even a date sometimes, usually on older pieces, and pieces that are what I call country made, usually are hand forged and they do not have a maker's mark. The finer locks are more likely to have a date or a mark on there. The next thing we're going to move on to is the bottom of the drawer. Loose. If if you ever find little blocks and stuff inside your furniture, these are usually drawer stops or braces somewhere. Don't throw them away, keep them, because they usually just need to be glued back in. So here's our drawer bottom. I'm going to show you two different drawer bottoms because I'm sure I have one somewhere here in the shop. So this right here you can tell is still a solid cut of pine, but it looks more precise, right? That's because that is beginning to be cut with some early machinery. So this is called a rabbit drawer bottom with a flat panel. This most likely puts us in the mid to later 19th century time period. Let me show you another one. Okay, this is still a rabbit joint, and see how it's thinner right here, but see how it gets a little bit larger? You see it goes kind of flat and then it just narrows off right there. There's a taper. That is because someone has hand cut this chamfer. Let me see if I can get the light to show it best. You see this light difference here? It's because you have your solid cut panel, but then someone went through with a like a hand planer. I don't always use the right term, but you know what I'm talking about. They went through and used a hand planer to chisel this area down. This is called hand chamfering. This is a chamfered panel. So that's going to let us know that that drawer is a little bit older. You also always want to make sure you're looking on your rails here, underneath your drawers, on the backs of your drawers. Makers are very, very well known for putting marks all over these areas. I have found everything from signatures with dates and specific locations to just regular markings that were in the workshop. Because sometimes they don't mean anything. Sometimes it's just a mark to let them know a measurement or to which case it went to, but sometimes it gives you all the information you need. So always make sure you're inspecting everything. There are a few things to keep in mind, but remember earlier I told you we were talking about the type of wood and what type of wood would have been used during this time period. Well, sometimes when you're looking around, okay, so this is great, but we never want to get too excited. A lot of times it's common to find stuff written on the back. Sometimes that was just written by movers when things were still shipped by train and by boat, depending on where they were going. I'm like, okay, do I think this was a maker's mark or a maker's initials, or do I think this was just where it was going to? Two things make me think this is where it originated. Number one, usually if a piece, well, three things. If this was just written by movers, it's usually going to be in white chalk. It could be in something else, but usually it's white chalk, and it's usually much messier, and it's written in a fast hand script. It's not going to be in block letters, usually. Secondly, this also goes for the same thing. If it was a maker writing the person's name on it, usually it's much quicker written. It's not going to be in a block style letter. The fact that this specifically is in a block style letter and it's very prominent, I think this is where either the maker made it. It could have come from a workshop, and this is just the initials of the actual person, the actual craftsman that made it. And then I think this is where it came from. Again, these are all educated guesses. I could be completely wrong, but doing a little bit of investigation on trying to figure out, okay, during this time period that I already think this is, from the construction, let's look up and see where there are towns located with the name Janesville. And there are several, but one that I found is in Wisconsin. And in the 19th century, and there may still be, I'm not sure about now, but I do know in the 19th century, there was a very large logging operation that sourced a lot of birch. And I already thought birch, so I'm like, okay, so this is adding up. We have a few things that are coming together and adding up for us. And then I remember I also told you that I felt like a lot of this was cut locally. That would make sense as well. Unfortunately, I had actually already made a correction to this, and I had tightened up a loose joint that was right here. But you could see that there was a hand-forged square nail in here. We also have some of the early machine-made nails with this little cross on the head. Usually that's going to be a combination of machinery-made heads put on hand-forged shafts. And then we have some just later adaptations down here. It looks like someone was just trying to tighten up a panel at some point. And we're going to see some newer nails with the marks through those. But because there were a variety of nails that were used in that tells me that we were kind of at a transitional period to where we still had older materials available, but some newer materials becoming available to use as well. After that impromptu history lesson, how old do you think this dresser is?